Aren't you just so tired of neighborhood tyrants who think they own the very ground we walk on? It really takes a certain level of delusion to enforce city codes while wearing Richard's salmon-color shorts. But I guess stories like these, petty, absurd HOA wars, are exactly why sovereign justice exists in the first place. Let's jump right into this mess. Have you ever had a man wearing salmon-colored shorts and a visor tell you that your own concrete is illegal? Because I have. And let me tell you, it's an experience unlike any other, right up there with stepping on a stray Lego or having wet socks on a rainy day. I live in Queen and Seattle. Now, if you've never been to Queen, and picture a neighborhood built by someone with a twisted sense of humor. The hills here don't just steepen, they defy gravity and reason. My house, a modest mid-century gem that I emptied my life savings into, is perched on one of these vertical absurdities. Attached to the house is my driveway. Calling it a driveway is being generous. It's more of a concrete launch pad. It was poured back in 1952, when cars were made of solid steel and people drank lead paint for breakfast. The slope? A whopping 25%. Every time I park, I have to engage the emergency brake, turn the wheels toward the curb, and say a prayer to the gods of friction. But it works. It's been there for over 70 years, and despite the strain on my calves every time I walk up it, it's my driveway. Then came Richard. He's the president of the Homeowners Association, and he's the type of guy who measures his neighbor's grass with a literal ruler and complains if your garbage cans are put out 4 minutes too late. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I was standing on my porch, enjoying a rare sliver of Seattle sunlight when I saw him coming. He was marching up the sidewalk, his trusty clipboard pressed to his chest like a bulletproof vest. He stopped at the base of my driveway, squinted up at me, and started his climb. He made it about 3 steps before his smooth-soled boat shoes betrayed him. "Careful, Richard," I called out, sipping my coffee. "It's a bit of an incline. You might want to zigzag." He glared at me, his face already turning the same shade as his shorts. He planted his feet wide, trying to fight gravity, but he was sliding backward with every step. "I'm fine," he huffed, but you could see him struggling. "I'm here on official HOA business," he finally said, his words clipped and serious. "Fascinating," I replied, leaning on the railing. "Did someone paint their front door a non-approved shade of eggshell again?" "This isn't a joke," Richard snapped, finally giving up the climb and waving a piece of paper from the sidewalk. "The city recently updated its zoning ordinances regarding vehicular hazards, and our HOA bylaws state that all properties must comply with current city codes. Your driveway is illegal." I stared at him. "My driveway has been here since the Truman administration." "Richard, grandfather clauses only apply until a hazard is officially recognized by the board," he said with a smug little smile. "Seattle Municipal Code dictates no residential driveway shall exceed a 20% grade. You're at 25. A vehicular hazard, a danger to the neighborhood. A danger to who?" I laughed. "You can't even walk up it. No car is accidentally wandering onto my property." "Be that as it may," Richard said, puffing out his chest, "you are in violation. I'm officially serving you notice." He took a step onto my driveway, slipped, caught himself, and instead opted to aggressively tape a bright yellow violation notice to my mailbox post. "You have 30 days to regrade this driveway to a compliant angle," he announced, adjusting his visor, "or abandon it entirely and restore the landscaping. If you fail to comply, the HOA will levy a fine of $500 per day. If the fines exceed $10,000, we'll place a lien on your property and seize it." He turned and marched away. I ripped the yellow paper off the mailbox and read it. $500 a day for concrete I didn't pour on a hill I didn't build. Regrading this driveway would require heavy machinery and engineering that I didn't have the money for. $40,000 minimum. I didn't have $40,000. What I did have was a burning hatred for bureaucratic bullies like Richard. I went inside, grabbed a beer, and called the one man crazy enough to look at this problem without immediately hanging up. Mike. Mike showed up the next morning. His truck sounded like a blender full of rocks. Mike was a contractor who had been fighting the city's permit office for decades. He ran on black coffee, gas station hot dogs, and pure rage. He slammed his truck door, walked over to the base of my driveway, and spat. "Look at this monstrosity," Mike grumbled. "They poured this right over the topsoil, didn't they?" "Oh, idiots," I muttered. "Good morning to you too, Mike. I need you to regrade it." Mike looked at me like I'd asked him to build a spaceship out of toothpicks. He pulled a hot dog out of his jacket pocket, took a massive bite, and chewed slowly. "Regrade it," he repeated. "But you want me to regrade a 25% slope over 30 feet. That's what the HOA says I need to do." Mike swallowed and pointed a greasy finger at the house. "Kid, look at the math. To get this down to a 20% grade, I'd have to lower the top of the driveway by 4 feet. Your garage is right there. If I lower it 4 feet, you'll be parking in your basement. That means I have to demolish your garage, underpin your living room foundation, build 3 retaining walls, and probably sacrifice a goat to the city planner." "So what's the quote?" I asked, knowing the answer already. 50 grand, Mike said flatly. "And I don't want a job. It's a nightmare. Tell your HOA to go pound sand. If I don't fix it, they'll fine me $500 a day until they steal my house." Mike looked at the driveway, then down the street toward Richard's pristine lawn. A slow grin spread across his face. "Oh, one of those. I hate those guys. Tell you what, let's go look at the rule book." We spent the next few hours sifting through the Seattle Municipal Code and the HOA's bylaws. I was looking for an exemption. "Here," I said, tapping a paragraph. "This section on pedestrian hardscaping. There's no maximum grade for stairs, only for driveways." Mike leaned back in his chair, narrowing his eyes. "You want to tear up your driveway and build stairs?" "I don't care," I said, adrenaline pumping. "The HOA says the driveway is a vehicular hazard." "Fine, they win. I'll abandon it. But I'm not planting grass. I'm building stairs." Mike chuckled. "Okay, let's play devil's advocate. We build stairs. The HOA cites you for an unapproved aesthetic modification, and they'll make you tear the stairs down anyway. They'll just pivot from the city code to their own rules." We needed something stronger, something that would crush Richard's clipboard. "What trumps an HOA?" I asked. Mike suggested God, federal law. I muttered, typing furiously. I remembered an article about a man in California who painted his house neon pink, and when the city tried to paint over it, he sued using a federal art law. "Got it," I said, staring at the screen. "The Visual Artists' Rights Act of 1990. Mike was silent. "Never heard of it," he said. "It's a federal copyright law," I explained. "It protects artwork from being destroyed or modified without the artist's permission, and it applies to permanent, site-specific pieces." I grinned. "We're not just building stairs, Mike. We're creating a public art installation." Mike nodded. "I know a guy." 3 days later, the demolition began. Mike's crew tore up the driveway, and I wanted it loud. The sound was glorious. It rattled the entire neighborhood, echoing down Queen and steep hills. The cops arrived 45 minutes later. Richard was already pointing at me, yelling, "This man is conducting an illegal, unpermitted excavation." I handed Officer Daniels the city permit. "Not an excavation, officer," I said. "I'm aggressively cultivating a terraced pedestrian experience." Richard screamed, "He's destroying property." Officer Daniels just sighed and said, "A permit from the city overrides your neighborhood rules. If he has a permit to build stairs, he can build stairs." Then Richard got really mad. "But that handrail is a violation." I smirked. "It's not a handrail, Richard. It's a commissioned art installation. The artist's work is protected under federal law. If you or anyone tries to destroy it, the artist can sue for $150,000. Richard froze. The smug look vanished. He knew he was beaten, but he still didn't give up. The HOA sent me fines. They sent me cease and desist letters. But nothing worked. The final showdown came at the HOA board meeting. Richard, looking more ridiculous than ever in his navy blazer, tried to go after me, citing every violation. But I was prepared. I handed them the federal law. I handed them the artist's statement. The room went dead silent. "Are you threatening us?" Richard sputtered. I smiled. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just exercising my rights. Federal law trumps your bylaws." The board, realizing they'd bitten off more than they could chew, voted to dismiss all charges and waive the fines. Richard was left standing there, alone, humiliated. I walked out of that room with a smile on my face. My driveway was gone, replaced with the most beautiful, spite-filled art installation in Queen Inn. And as I stood there, looking at the jagged metal staircase and the hideous teal moped I used to block Richard's parking spot, I realized something. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Richard thought he could bully me into submission, but in the end he lost. Karma had its way, and I couldn't have been more satisfied. But here's the real question. How far should we let these HOA presidents push before we start taking back our power? When does standing up for our rights cross the line into a form of justice so satisfying it feels like a personal victory? Share your thoughts.